What would be some advice you would give from one unicorn founder to the next? I would say like, this is about to happen. Here's some things you can armor yourself with that maybe you would have liked to have in the beginning of that chapter. Does that question make sense to you?
No, I think for sure, because you need to be constantly reinventing yourself, because the challenges that you face in the start require very different solutions to the challenges that you face when you are scaling, for example. And building up the right structures around you is super critical to your success, because at the end of the day, if you do not have a certain set of structures that keep you grounded and allow you to adapt and help you see whether you're doing, how you're performing on as yourself and not as the business, you'll come crashing down pretty fast. So understanding what are the exact challenges that are being faced, and then what would be the structures that would help you face those challenges in the best way, would be something that one really has to think about. Because the challenges that you're facing when, for example, you are figuring out what the right idea is very different in terms of the people that you need, in terms of the capital that is required, in terms of the scale of the experimentations, compared to now I know exactly the idea or the exact business model, and now I need to scale this as well.
I think it's like, how do you feel? What advice would you give somebody who's raising? And what was something you learned from being a part of this crazy adventure about raising people?
Yeah, I think
do you think you now have that maybe probably you didn't have it before you raised?
I think fundraising is, first of all, it's definitely a lot on how much are you capitalizing on a current trend where all of the capital is interested in. Like for example, right when COVID happened, delivery was the number one idea. It was either grocery delivery or any sort of delivery, or virtual conferences or online dating. These three were, or of course, masks or medicine or any within that space. These four were industries where you, as long as you had an idea that made a bit of sense, you had a lot of capital available, because people really understood that they could make a very quick return on their capital. When COVID finished, you had a very sharp decline on these last mile logistic companies, online video conferencing companies. Things example also from these, what was that company's name where you come log in and have virtual conversations?
The company's name for Zoom or?
No, there's like another one where you could have online chats and so on. It went up and now it's gone down completely as well.
Okay, I can only think of Zoom or something. I just know. Yeah. Okay. So there was like a connection between the world was in an abnormal state and people capitalize on it. And so it's like when investors saw that there was an immediate opportunity for them, they capitalize on it. So we had to be in alignment with the zeitgeist of the generations of the same.
Exactly, because if you make it easy to ride the wave of capital is always there. It just depends on what industry you're at the moment. And then, of course, there's a lot of different questions about defensibility, having a really strong team, being able to show results fast and so on. But I think before that, choosing which industry you're at a certain time is one of the biggest determining factor of how easy it's going to be for you to raise capital.
I'm very interested also in the idea of iceberg psychology, where it's like you see the outcomes of people, but you don't see the stuff that they did in the dark that developed a kind of character that justified that they could endure being on the mountaintop. What was something that you did during this stage at worst where nobody knew about it, but it was actually foundational to you, to the contribution of this, or to you being able to withstand this kind of pressure that came with it?
I think founding businesses is all about doing stuff without expecting return, or better to put, doing work despite of getting no results. And as a founder, you basically need to be doing all of the dirty work, because you will be doing endless amount of work which will not give you any monetary results in the start. And you have to be okay with that. If you come up with very high expectations that I need to do this and I need to see results very early monetarily, it's going to be very hard for you to succeed, because there will be a long time period where you don't see that. If you judge success from the lens of money, but if you judge success from the lens of learning, then it's very rewarding, because every action that you take, if you properly reflect on it, you learned something out of it. So it was successful. Even if you failed in all of the dimensions of, you didn't get any customers, users acquisitions, money, etc., etc. So there's a lot of work that goes in the dark within that space. And I think usually you only get rewarded for your success when you've already succeeded since a long time.
Like I'm already dead, as where I don't need anything anymore from this, where the idea that this exists is rewarding themselves for me. I'm so inspired by people of the past who, I don't know, like some of the inventors of humanity had is like 400 years later, like people started to use what they have come up with, and I always feel like if you only do for stuff that you get paid by tomorrow, it's a very, you're a child, you're not a leader to some degree. If you could put like a message on every coffee mug in the world of the founders who are in that first stage where they do the deliveries themselves, where they don't have a big office yet, they're doing the podcast, like here, what was like something you would write to them as a mantra or something to look at it every day or something like that? Something to not lose track of me.
I think there's a lot of different mantras out there that speak to each different people differently, but I would say maybe the one that can help you sustain that initial hardship would really be to only think about, do you know more about how to make this successful, whatever venture you're doing, than yesterday? And that is the only thing that matters. Because in the grand scheme of things, if you definitely come up with, first have these inspiration or motivation that, I'm doing this because I want to be a millionaire, or I want to go ahead and change the lives of millions of people or so on, that task is so daunting that you will constantly feel that you are failing. Yeah. So if you reframe that and you'd only make it that, have you learned more about your venture than yesterday?
What was, you think, your biggest test of your leadership in regards to your entrepreneurial career?
I think for leadership, it's the two biggest values that I see are, how can you inspire people to work on something that is bigger than themselves? And that is extremely hard to do. Because if you want to convince someone to work on something which they need to put even before themselves, it needs to be a big vision. It needs to be exciting enough that they say it's worth it. And we collectively are going to buy into this vision and make this even something before our, let's say, personal interest directly. But the interest of the vision will basically ultimately also be in the interest of ourselves, but in the long term. So that is something which is extremely hard to do. And then managing those, or keeping that up when you already, as the stakes get higher, is an extremely difficult test because as the stakes get higher personally, it is so easy to bring yourself before the group.
The image that I came to my mind is like when you go up Mount Everest, the oxygen comes less and less. But there are certain people who are able to make the pilgrimage and come down to tell the tale of what it's like upstairs. What was a moment where the stakes were on and where you visibly felt like, okay, this is there's a lot of pressure from your side. Any moment that comes to your mind?
I would say it was definitely when we were scaling up Flink. We reached to more than 10,000 employees within the first year. I had an enormously fast scaling business, going from 0 to millions of users within a couple of months, opening up new warehouse and no sleep, countless hours of work, a lot of different pressure. But I think the success keeps you going. But as soon as you have, let's say, like a big setback, that's where you can be extremely hard on yourself, and it really kind of brings you down. And I think one of the moments I remember was I was in charge of auto technology, and technology is one thing where you can easily spot a mistake. So because it's very visual, as soon as there's a bug, everybody knows there's an issue, which is very different in marketing, because in marketing, if you mess up, you basically realize that the spend did not really bring you the same results in a couple of weeks or so on. But in tech, it's instant. It's in microseconds where you can see that the whole system is down. And this was at a stage where we had scaled up nationwide, had hundreds of warehouses, and had a complete nationwide shutdown of our business because we weren't ready to scale that fast. We basically were the fastest growing company of the world at that time. So, and we were not prepared for it from a tech perspective because we went way too fast. And it was basically like a sinking ship with a lot of holes that we had to kind of take the water out at the same time while repairing the different holes in that ship as well. And there was definitely one moment where we basically had big presentations to investors, and we were launching, and everything collapsed. And at that moment, as you can imagine, the stakes are extremely high, and you have thousands of people, such as the riders that are going and delivering in Wiesbaden, remote areas of Germany that completely are stuck. You have warehouse people that are packing groceries, and now suddenly all of them have no idea what to do and are just stuck. And at this moment, the panic just multiplies because it starts bottom up. It goes to the manager, and basically till the time it reaches to you, it has amplified exponentially, and the buck stops with you at that time because there's no one that you can go and complain to. You have to now be the one to solve all the problems. You're the problem, so you're the firefighter. You're not the one who can now actually go and ask anybody for help and so on. And I think at that time there was definitely a lot of pressure that was put in, and I think it was also very helpful because same thing as I say, pressures makes time is you need to go through that to face it because nothing can prepare you for it. No kind of practice.
If you would walk us through the war room, like the meeting of like, it's very funny. Most people who listen to this will never experience this problem. And only the lucky ones, proudly, are going to be in those kind of rooms. What's that like? Like, what were the conversations like? If you would take us back in time, and how did this feel like for you? Because with technology, when something breaks, it's like, it's different. Like I'm more like a visionary kind of guy in a way. It was like if the vision is not correct, you won't.
feel it right.
But if the app is down tomorrow, is all the pressures on you? What was that conversation like, or what? And how did you stay professional in that, or stoic in those kind of situations? What would be some advice for somebody who experiences peak unicorn level stress?
I'd say it's one of the most ultimate fight or flight moments at that time, even though, of course, you're not facing a lion or so on, but emotionally you are, because you have hundreds of people, and most ironically, the ones that you trust and love and have basically your own comrades that are coming to you with a lot of stress and panic. And different personalities are going to be expressing it in different ways. So the ones that are very emotional are going to be very flamboyant about it. The ones that are very analytical are going to be expressing it through numbers and so on. And they're all coming at you at the same time, just to kind of, in their own goodwill, they want to help you solve the issue, but they feel the need to express to you of how big the issue is, just to somehow convey, at those times, people think that they are helpful by reporting to you how bad the issue is, because they are not in a position to fix it. So the only way that they can help is making you aware of how bad it is. And because they feel helpless at that time, because it's not in their domain, they don't have the exact control of it, they don't understand why it happened, the only way they feel they can help more is by basically making it very clear to you how bad it is. And at that time, you have to, if you have a lack of belief in yourself, it becomes extremely hard. If you have a certain sense of being a people pleaser, it becomes really hard. And if you let other people tell you what to do, it also becomes really hard. Because at that time, you have to take the decision of how to solve it. And to take that decision, you have to be completely pragmatic and not emotional at all, which is one of the hardest things, because you have people coming up to you and people that, you really care about and you're very close to, coming and saying, this is how bad the situation is, it's going so wrong. And you have to not let it affect you, so that you can actually take the best decision at that time to resolve it as quickly as possible.